This is a speaker meeting. We are delighted to have Claudia from Germany to share her experience, strength, and hope with us tonight. To introduce the speaker, we have Denise from Germany. Woo!
Hi, my name is Denise. I'm an alcoholic and an addict from Germany, and I'm so proud member of Cocaine Anonymous. Um, when I got asked to introduce Claudia, I mean, I came so far. Everything I can say or I want to say actually is thank you. And this includes actually everything. It includes my life, which I love today, a fellowship where I'm a member from, which I never wanted to, which I judged before. And this isn't about persons, I learned. This is about one addict talking to the other. And she did this in such a masterly way. I never wanted to be clean and sober. I never wanted to be an addict. And I couldn't imagine to keep on living as I did. But what she did was passing on the message of Cocaine Anonymous. She did. It wasn't words, she did. What she did and what she said to me, sometimes I seriously didn't like, but it worked. And so she showed me her love to me. And this made me love her. She might be the first person I made the decision of love someone because what he's doing and not saying. Day by day, I did what all of you are doing, and it led me to be here. And she does. She's doing since almost 22 years. She built up CA Germany. I may not say that, but she does. She did it. She did all the services. She showed it to me. She is keep on passing on. And now back to me. It's just thank you, Claudia.
Thank you. Thank you. My name's Claudia and I am an addict. And I'm going to work very hard not to go into TED Talk mode. I'm here and I'm free and I'm a recovered addict. I know what that means today. I enjoyed hearing the word love from our lovely Denise. I know what love is today. It's one of the things that we get totally wrong when we come in. Dr. Bob said it with his last words. We all know what love is. The whole program all boils down to love and service, and we do know what love is. No, Dr. Bob, I did not know what love is when I came in. I thought love is what I needed. I needed that somebody to put love into my life in order to make me happy. That's how I came in, totally confused about really everything. Broken. I was broken in 2003. And before I come to my own story, I want to let you know why I chose this song. I chose this song because it's the right groove, yes. And I couldn't tell you what she's singing, and Martin double checked with me. Are you sure you don't want the rehab song? That's the one that's quite common at conventions. Oh, no, I want this one. So I looked up the actual words, and it's quite beautiful what she's doing because she's my sister. She knows about being one of us. Well, sometimes I go out by myself, me, myself, and I. And I look across the water. I'm somewhere where no one is bothering me. I'm away from all these nasty people that get on my nerves. And I look across the water. And I think of all the things, what you are doing. I'm fantasizing about somebody. And in my head, I paint a picture. In my head, I paint a picture. That's a pretty good summary of my disease. I was living a filthy, dirty, selfish, fearful life. And I was painting that picture in my head of, yeah, I got this. If my lipstick is right, I'm queen of the world. And I tell you what did that to me, it was booze. I remember getting drunk for the very first time. And it was so freeing and liberating. And you know, they say that the steps will do to you slowly what drugs and alcohol once did very slow, very quickly. And I love everyone in this room. And that used to be what I said when I was drunk. Sober, I hated everyone in the room, but drunk, oh, you were all beautiful. You have no idea how beautiful you are. So I'm someone, I stood in a wrong position there. I'm someone who never ever cries in meetings. I don't do tearful. I know there are people who said I cried throughout my first year. Wasn't my experience. I'm not a crier, but today I may. And there's a very good reason for that, because David is not here. David is my husband, and he was always there, and he was always close by, and he passed away last January after a long disease. And it used to be that David and I came together to this convention. So I catch myself looking around, where's David? And he's not here. So if I cry, it's not because of you, it's because of where I am in my life. And one thing I have to let you know that David and I did, we came to the 2000, this is, you wouldn't believe how meaningful this is, this big room. 2013, David and I came to the CA convention. That was the last one I believe you had in The Hague. And we traveled to The Hague. My story is all about drinking. I was never introduced to street drugs. I'm one of those people who never used, for one very good reason: the drugs were never in one room with me. Trust me, I would have loved them. I've heard you all talk about them, and I would have enjoyed them. And I would not have let go of them. I would always have had another one. Where was I going with this? So I have that history of drinking, and I said 2013 in a speaker meeting in The Hague of a convention of Cocaine Anonymous, and a dope fiend from New York talked about heroin. And only halfway through the share, I realized he means heroin. I thought, what's a heroin? That's a bird in my school English. So, and then he talked about this disease in words that I understood. And I was at home. And at that convention, David and I took home a starter kit that Russell and Monica, I believe, put together. It's their fault. And they handed it over to us, and we took it home. We didn't have a CA meeting in Germany at that time. And right now, I would like to see all of the German CA members. Stand up, stand up. So from no CA, and there's 2 more carloads coming, and I don't know what else. But let me tell you about how I got here. Let me tell you how I got to Cocaine Anonymous. I grew up in a rural area near the Dutch border, actually really not too far from here. And I don't know, I grew up, I went to school, no one beat me, I wasn't abused, it wasn't, you know, life was kind of dragging on a day at a time, and I went, I didn't quite know what to make of it all, and I wasn't close to anybody. And I started scratching my head and thinking my parents don't love me the right way. She's got a nicer mom with more colors, and they have a fancier car because their parents are making more money. I kind of started having those silly thoughts. Um, and then one day I was introduced to alcohol. And oh my God, it hit me right away. And if there's one big lie I told myself in 20 years of drinking, it was, hey, let's go out and have a glass of wine, okay? And it never was, yeah, she knows. It never was one glass of wine, it was always plural. I was a chain drinker from day one. And I loved it, and it was good. And the way it made me feel on the inside, warm, it went down, and I felt warm, and I felt like I have a place in the world. And I felt like maybe this life has a place for me, and maybe I can belong, and maybe I can get through this without falling apart. Because that, the truth be told, falling apart was what I was doing constantly. But I didn't know it at the time when I was living that way, because it was so constant. So I drank and I drank and I drank and I drank and I drank. And, you know, beginning, it was weekends, looking forward to the party. And then it was more often. And I got to a place where it didn't work anymore. That lovely warm feeling on the inside, it never came back. That miracle of that first, the lights are on like on a Christmas tree, that miracle never returned. I had that once at the beginning, and I kept chasing it. And I mean, and I was such an embarrassment. I'm painting this picture in my head of, ooh, I live the high life and I'm so clever. Like at university, I always had a sleeping bag in the boot of the car. So whenever I'm drunk, I don't have to drive drunk. I'm clever. I'm not breaking the law. And I slept in parks at the university town, and I thought, look at me. I've got this under control. I can do this. And I felt fabulous for it. And I wasn't fabulous. And, you know, I think I was lucky that I never became a rape victim in a park, because lying around drunk as a female university student, it's pretty clear the path you're on. What I did instead, I took men home for one night stands, and I never knew their names. When I wrote my inventory, I didn't know what names to write down, because, I mean, by the time I woke up from my hangover, they had already left the house. And it was just, I was looking for something, and I was always running for something. I was running away from myself. I want to thank you for being here, because I'm dead if I'm not here. But if I'm here on my own, I'm dead too. So the less using worked for me, the less I could get loaded, the more I did it. Suddenly I started in the morning. Suddenly it wasn't fancy wine. Suddenly it was schnapps, Aldi vodka. And that progression was just there. And all this time, I'm telling myself, yeah, ich bin vielleicht suchtgefährdet. Yeah, I may be at risk of developing an addiction. I'm drinking daily. My whole life is around that bottle. Like, make sure there is a bottle in the fridge, and always make sure there's another one from when that one is empty, and make sure you always buy in different places, so in the village they don't talk about you, that you might have been having a problem. And, you know, all the logistics. If you're new here, just not having to manage those logistics anymore is worth it. Would you do me a favor? Would you raise your hand if you're in your first year? Fabulous. So I don't know about you, but I know when I came in, I had no idea what's on offer here, and it took quite a while. So what happened, my last year of getting drunk, one day, I'm standing in front of a case of beer, and it was already half empty. And I looked at the other beer bottles that would be the next, and suddenly I realized, you know what? No matter how much I drink, it's not going to fill the hole on the inside. I'm one of the people who didn't come here because she drank too much. I'm one of the people who came here because the world doesn't have enough alcohol to fill that hole on the inside. And but as I said, I couldn't get drunk anymore. So being sort of at risk, and one day I will drink less when I have to. Actually, that evening, looking at that case of beer, I called an old school friend. I said, Julia, my marriage is so bad, it makes me drink. Oh. You see the picture I paint in my head? I always find these stories around whatever's happening. I never, ever find the truth on my own alone. And she said, darling, promise me you'll get a grip on that. And I said, yes. And I drank 2 bottles less the next day. And half a year later, that was the month that taught me. Around Christmas, I decide I'm going to drink a little less before Christmas because now here's my life is falling apart. I don't know how to earn a living. My marriage is falling apart. I don't know how to raise my child. I hate my mother-in-law. I hate my father-in-law. I know that they hate me. And the biggest problem in my life is my waistline. So let me cut down on the calories and drink a little less today. December 1st, and I can walk you through 30 days and make it very dramatic, but the truth is I tell myself in the morning, today I'm going to not have a drink. Today it will be tea or whatever. Down on the calories. And I swear I meant it in the morning. And by the middle of the day, it's gone. It has disappeared from my memory that I had that promise to myself in the morning. And then December is gone, and I look in the mirror and I see I have a glass in my hand. And it dawns on me, I have a glass in my hand every time I look in the mirror. And I have 2 theories about that today. One is I can't stand looking at myself sober. I need to get drunk to bear looking at myself. And the other theory is I was just never without a glass. And I can't reconstruct it. No one was videotaping me at the time. I think both is true in a way. So I see that and shit. And 6th of January 2003, I have friends over for champagne breakfast. Champagne breakfast, of course, you know, let's play high life. And they come and they go. And I look at the bottles lined up. 3 of them I emptied. And then there were the water bottles, were emptied by them, but they were not driving. Yeah. What on earth makes you drink water if you're not driving? So that was a moment where a truth hit me. And the truth was, you know what? You're different from those people. What alcohol does to me is not the same as what alcohol does to them. And I learned later, they are the non-alcoholics. They are the non-addicts. They are the normal people who do that boring stuff, go to work, build a life, have children, pay taxes, all the things that I thought are beneath my dignity. And so that was, I was inching towards a surrender. And I would have had so many moments when I could have surrendered previous to that. But then, what happened that day? Okay, so after that realization, what I did was I looked at the fridge. Well, I still have supply for the evening, and I went to bed and had a snooze. And my son was 3 years old at the time. And I did manage to drink just 2 glasses of wine per week while I was pregnant. And the whole 9 months, I was telling anyone who was not interested, and I tell you what, when these 9 months are over, I'm going to have 1 whiskey bottle and drink it in one go. So that's me trying to control it. That was my last attempt at controlling my drinking. I could have fooled myself. I can control it, but when I control it, I cannot enjoy it. I don't enjoy that. That's not how I want to drink. So my son is 3. I go over to my future ex-husband's house. We were already separating, and read my son a bedtime story. We had arranged to do that evening, 6 o'clock. I read the bedtime story, I switch off the lights, give him a goodnight kiss, close the door, and I step away from his room, his bedroom, and I stand on top of a staircase. And I'll never forget that moment. And the door opens behind me, and my little son, 3 years old, light blue, very cute pajama, innocent as can be as a 3-year-old, says, "Mom, would you read me another bedtime story?" And in that moment, I knew I'm turning into a monster. In that moment, I knew nobody gets between me, because the radar was on. My radar had switched on. There are still 2 bottles in my fridge, and that's where I'm going now. And in that moment, nothing happened on the outside, but on the inside, I knew what I'm capable of and where I'm heading. Not where I'm heading, where I'm at. I didn't like who I am. And I thought, shit, you need to get help. And I think the blessing there in that moment was, it's the moment we often miss, because my last drink was like 4 hours ago or something. So I was like half sobering up. I was like sober enough to take notice of this, but I was still drunk enough to just be disgusted with myself and realize how disgusting I was. Turn around, read the bedtime story, go back to my other apartment, separated from the husband, and I sit down and I pick up the phone and I call a helpline and I said, I think I have a drinking problem. And that was the first time that I ever was truthful about what was actually happening in my life. People from the outside could have told me. Anyone could have seen it. And later people told me, yeah, I often smelled it on you. I'm like, what? I never would have known. So I start going to meetings and there are no CA meetings. And I enter rooms and what I experience. So we share experience, strength, and hope. Sorry. Experience, strength, and hope. Yeah, I just got confused. It says hope, faith, and courage. Am I jumbling up the words? No. So my experience was I go into those rooms and it feels good. I'm with like-minded people. I'm with weird people. They are as sick as me. Most of them are much sicker and worse off than me. So I'm going to be very generous with my charity spirit and sit around and smile. And something really awkward happened. I was separated from drinking. And I heard enough people talk about, no, one just doesn't do it. We always do many. And they did share some hard truths with me that I was not ready to hear, but I heard them. Couldn't avoid sitting in a room with them. And then I heard at meeting after meeting after meeting from person after person after person saying the same thing. And you know, there are these steps, and I've never done them. I've never done them. Don't get upset about the steps. Don't get obsessed with them. You don't need them, really. Now, here's what's happening to me. I came in and my spirit was dead. And I was looking for a solution. I really wanted to get well. I wanted to do what I needed to do to solve this problem that Claudia had. But no one told me what to do. No one. And I think, so the next thing, 2003 was a ridiculously hot summer. And I remember it was like 40 degrees at night. It was tropic and I was dehydrated and I needed water. I needed hydration. And my head is telling me, you have to have that cognac now. The craving came back with such force. It was incredible. And I was lucky. In that moment, I was able to go to a meeting of those people who told me, we don't know. We don't know who makes it, and we don't know how to work those steps. We've never done them. The book wasn't in the room. There was all sorts of non-fellowship literature in the room. This was my experience. I don't know what other people experience in the same rooms today or at other times. And the next part is really hard. December 2004, I'm still white knuckling my sobriety. And I've got like, you know, this kind of home baked, you've got a bit of positive affirmations and you've got a bit of prayers that you picked up and a day at a time, yeah, let go, let God. I'm still painting the picture in my head of what sobriety and recovery is supposed to be. And I'm so unhappy. Every morning I wake up, and if there was a switch on the wall where I could just switch myself off, I would have done it. I never attempted suicide. I think having a 3-year-old son kept me from that. But it was like, and my body was so broken. I felt, I actually thought this. I think you're going to turn, I was 36 at the time. I think you're going to turn 40. And I was doing the maths. Then my son would be old enough to remember a mother that he once had. And then I'll probably pick up some horrible disease and die within a couple of months. That was my best hope, surrounded by people who said, nah, don't worry about the steps. We don't do them. Sponsorship was never mentioned. The book wasn't there. And then in December, I'm driving. I'm driving, and my father had come down to pick me and my son up to go up for Christmas to same area near the Dutch border. I'm driving, and I'm looking in the rearview mirror, and I'm like in that Amy Winehouse song mode, yeah. And the sunglasses I was wearing, they were so cute. I was looking so cute. So I'm totally absorbed with self-centeredness. I was totally self-consumed. And I think I'm almost literally thinking, if Brad Pitt came by right now, he would get on his knees and ask me to marry him on the spot. And while I'm in that mode, you know that mode? While I'm in that mode, the front left wheel of the car that I'm driving hits something in the road, and it flips through the air. And while we're in the air, like 180 degrees, my father is shouting from the back, Claudia, what are you doing? He's yelling. And on the tip of my tongue, I want to say, shut up, I know what I'm doing. That's me and my disease. Shut up, I know what I'm doing. That's how I defend myself and my self-centeredness. And then I couldn't say it. I think the tree was too quick that hit us. So we smashed the tree. I turned around. My son is covered with broken glass. His head is dangling like this. And he's, Mommy, Mommy, I have such a headache. And I look at my father, and my father is white as the wall, and he looks like he's going to have his last breath any moment. He had 11 ribs broken. So both of them, let me not forget to mention that. I once forgot to mention that, and people got really nervous. Both of them recovered fully physically, thanks to the help of those boring people who work at hospitals, who work in rescue services, and who look after us when we get in a mess and put us together again. But in that moment when I was looking at the two of them, my ego was gone. That was my step 3 moment. That was my moment when all the wisdom that I thought I was carrying and all the cleverness and power that I thought I had, they were gone. And in that moment, I don't think I said the prayer literally, but in that moment I said, okay, whatever God there is, just tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it without debating it, without questioning it, without rephrasing and editing it. I'll just do what you put in front of me. And if that means my son will be a basket case and I'll change his diapers from here onwards, I'll just do it. And that was my step 3 experience. And they say when the student is ready, the teacher shows up. So I met my first sponsor a few months after, and she was a lady who just kept saying, my sponsor, and took me through the big book and took me through the steps, and this changed and that changed. And there was one thing about her. She was always cheerful. She was always helpful. She was someone you always wanted to be around. And I finally plucked up the courage to go to her and ask her, would you help me? Would you sponsor me? She says, I never say no. Of course I will. And she introduced me to the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. She introduced me to the steps. She got me all the way to step 9. I'll never forget those amends. If anyone here has never done these steps and has never done the amends, I'm not going to tell you about what they're like. Have your own experience. But I remember moments when I literally had to get on my knees with gratitude that being washed away with, oh my God, the freedom, the things that we do gave me was just unbelievable. So now here I am. I've got a recovery with the 12 step as outlined in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I have a sponsor. I listen to her no matter what she says. That was hard. Zip your lips, let your sponsor finish what they say, and don't say yes, but, and don't explain to them what they should understand. I got there. And I remember moments when she said something, Claudia, that's very self-defensive right now. Or is there any use in going back to that self-pity and pain from the past? No, there's not. And then I got recovery and I went to meetings and I was literally clinging on to my little big book because that told me if I have the book in my hand and if I have my own experience that someone very generously passed on to me, then there's two of us. And I went to meetings and people just kept sharing as before. And suddenly I was an outsider in the rooms where I had been at. And that's how I came to Cocaine Anonymous. A few years down the road, I entered rooms of Cocaine Anonymous really by coincidence. I'm like, but I never used cocaine. Now, don't worry, you fit in. And by the way, I do introduce myself as an addict because I suffer from the disease of addiction. I don't suffer from alcoholism like that's another disease. Like you don't suffer from cocaineism or from heroinism or from weed, marijuanaism or whatever other isms there might be. I've heard drug users say, my alcoholism manifests in crack cocaine. And I'm like, I say it the other way around. My alcoholism, my disease of addiction manifested in alcohol. And it just what happened to me. I do understand when people say, I need to talk to someone who's been on the same street corners. I just need that connection. Go and find that connection. But I do not have a different disease. And I was sponsored by a cocaine addict in Cocaine Anonymous. And I have the privilege of sponsoring women who've, I don't know, they've taken things that I wouldn't recognize if you put them in front of me. And we have the same disease. So when I came across Cocaine Anonymous, it was like, yeah, this is what I need. I need a room that is alive, that is on fire. I need people around me who have unity in the message that we have. We have one thing only on offer, and that's recovery. Recovery from the disease of addiction. You never have to use again. Do you know how big that is? And it is true. If you're new here and if you're still doubting and struggling, you never have to use again. That's a promise. You may use again. It will depend on your journey and the actions you take. I cannot transmit recovery to anybody. I can only be like that beggar who tells other beggars where she found bread. All the problems that I came into the room with, my fears, my anxiety, my self-centeredness, they disappeared somewhere on that journey through the steps. And I remember a day when I came across that prayer, ask him in your morning meditation what you can do for the addict who still suffers today, what you can do today. And I prayed that prayer and I meant it. I was having another resentment and I took my inventory. So-and-so said this and that in the meeting and I'm writing my columns. And I come to column 4 and I'm such a busybody. Laziness is not an easy character defect for me to discover. And I have to write down, I'm just lazy. I'm too lazy to start a new meeting or a new fellowship. And I ended up with David, the two of us, after that 2013 convention in The Hague, we decided we have to start a CA meeting. There's no other way. And the weird thing is, I came from rooms where there were more people to, it was just David and me, the two of us. And you would think that that could be very lonely and limited. It was actually the opposite. Anything that I have experienced in recovery was always very different from what I would have imagined it to be. We sat in those rooms and we started translating. we felt we want to make sure that the original message in the shares of our storybook, they became our speakers who were there every week. So every week I would translate one of the stories in Hope, Faith, and Courage too. And those of you who have their stories there, you'd have fun hearing it in German. And that, and suddenly there were so many. What is it? 26 stories. So it was 26 plus David and me. So I suddenly was connected to people who were rowing shoulder to shoulder with me, the people who did the same as myself. I wish I had the words to tell those of you who don't yet know where this can take you. I don't have the words. You'll have to find out for yourself. I do know that promise that the best is yet to come is still true for me after 21 and a half years. The best is yet to come. I've had challenges. So I talked about love. Let me talk a little bit about love. That always, you all look very satisfied, and I don't want you to fall asleep. And love usually is a good topic to wake us up. So from my woolly ideas about love, they were just ideas of greed. If I'm obsessed about Mr. So-and-so of the month, I once counted how many men were the love of my life, and it was really embarrassing. The list was longer than it should because there's only one love of your life, I suppose. So I got to understand that that's just greed and it's fear-driven. If I don't latch onto this one right now, I may never get my chance of having love in my life. And I got into such dire straits, being driven by my egotistic, egomaniac wants and greeds and selfish desires. It was really ugly. And the worst craving I ever had, I was messing around with someone. And it was really the pointers were there at the beginning that this isn't God's will, this is not right. But I ignored them. I'm good at ignoring truth. And then he decided to tell me, ironically, he decided to tell me that I put on a little bit of weight, so he's not sure he wants me anymore. And I tell you what, that was a blessing, because I said, if you're not sure if you want me, then we're done. Ciao. And I think God was looking after me in that moment. And I cried and I cried and I cried, and I went to a meeting and I put on the big glasses and I had swollen eyes. And I think that's what broke it inside me. That's what got me to a place whenever I fancied, oh, he's got nice blue eyes or brown eyes or whatever. Whenever that obsession wanted to kick in, I went on my knees right away and said, God, take my selfishness away from me. And I was okay being a woman on my own and living as a single. I was committed to living just myself. And I was a single for years. And I threw myself in service. And I was chasing newcomers like my life depends on them. And you know what? It does. All the good things that happen in my life came through newcomers. I have a lovely home today, and it was a newcomer who told me about someone else moving out there, the apartment getting available, so maybe put your name in the frame. And I have a fabulous job today. And that job came through another newcomer. She crossed paths with me in the supermarket. We had exchanged phone numbers, and she says, how are you doing? And I'm like, yeah, I'm working freelance. It's not really building up an income, job hunting. And 2 weeks later, she sends me a link to a job offer, job announcement. I applied for it, and it was right. All the good things in my life came from newcomers. So they keep me sober, not the other way around. They give me another experience of the steps. I never went through the steps again, a second time or a third time or a fourth time. I never did that. I continued to do steps 10, 11, 12 continuously, but I never went back to one and all over. And it's one of the biggest myths that we suddenly hear in the fellowship. I have no idea where it came from, But all of a sudden, people tell you, oh, you should do your step 5 with several people, because actually the book says that. And you know what? I went to the book, I opened it, and I counted. The book says 23 times we share our step 5 with one other person. And then there's one page where it says, well, now, if there's a part of your story that will hurt that other person, you don't do it to them. You take that part to someone else. So the person or persons who will hear your step 5, don't do multiple step 5s, and don't do that to sponsees. That's not our recovery program. And if anyone wants to do that down the road somewhere, let them. I know what my book says, and I know what my experience is. And my experience is every time I get the privilege of sitting down with another woman and hear her step 5, I have another experience of that spiritual space. And she's keeping me sober another 24 hours. And that's such a privilege. That's the biggest privilege you can have. I'm wandering off. I was going somewhere else with this. Where was I love, thank you. Yeah. So in that time when I thought I need love in my life, so I got on my knees, I prayed, God, take that away from me. And he did. And I mean, that prayer works. And I was single, and I sat in a meeting, and an old couple talked about how his sponsor once pointed out to him, hey, you're now in recovery on wife number 5, and you always tell me the same story. It's just that the names change. And he said something in that meeting that I took to heart. He said, you need to not have someone in your life. You need to be single and work with others, because that's where you learn to be a loving person. And that was my experience and was true to me. When I put someone else's well-being first, that being a lady who has given me the privilege that I get to be close to her as she goes on this journey, that's where I practice love, and that's where I learned to be loving. And that's what I needed. I didn't need a gift to come and shower whatever on me. I needed to learn to be able to love someone else. It wasn't going to be about me. And when I fell in love with David, or when David and I kind of knew there is a bond that's more than shared experience, strength, and hope between us, I did the same thing. I went on my knees and I prayed, God, whatever needs to happen for that man, let it happen for him. And I meant it in that moment. You know, I'm going to stay out of his way if I'm not adding to his life and if that's not your will. Having said that prayer, we then very tentatively and carefully outside the rooms. Don't look for partners in the rooms. This is not the place to find a date. And not before you've had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps and proven that you can live alone and your sponsor's blessing. Both of us had that. And okay, I'm going to share a little bit. David is going to giggle from wherever he's sitting. So our first night sharing the bedroom, we look at the skies and the stars are bright and we have all that blurry-eyed hoo hoo hoo. And there's a helicopter. And we both say, oops, sponsorship control. But the truth behind that is both of us had the blessing of our sponsor and both were in that space where we have a higher power in our life. His sponsor asked him, he says, the only thing I want to know about that whatever woman you're want to go out with is, has she got a higher power in her life? Because if not, she's making you her higher power. And I've tried that. And he had tried that. I guess we all tried that. And that doesn't work either. So that was love. What? 1 minute. Oops. When David died, January 12th this year, it was horrible. He should have lived forever. He should be here with us now. He was a very special human being. And he was a very faulty and wrong human being too. He could make a mess of things like all of us. And when he died, I had always thought that I know I'm not good at accessing my emotions, and maybe I'm gonna sit down one evening and to do my grieving and to allow the tears to flood. I'm gonna watch The English Patient, because that ends with that big moment of, oh, and his lungs were broken, and it was a big love affair, and maybe that will trigger. And again, it wasn't what I imagined it to be. When I actually watched the movie very recently, I found out that those two were as messy as David and I had been. So there are no holy saints in these rooms. And at the very end, she is dying and she writes a letter. And in that letter, she writes something very, very beautiful that I want to share with you. I know you will come and carry me out into the palace of winds, which I suppose is a spiritual space, the palace of winds. That's all I've wanted, to walk in such a place with you, with friends. For me, that's a definition of love. I get to walk with friends here at these conventions. And I sometimes ask myself, what is it at these conventions that's so special? You know what it is? We walk with friends. I cannot do this program on my own at home. And I'm super blessed to have the honor and the privilege to share this with you. Give me one more sentence, please. Because I meant to say at the very beginning, thank you, CA Holland, for putting on this event. I think I know how hard you've worked, and probably I don't know how hard you've worked, but it's worth it. And the experience will be different from what any of us have imagined. And I know I will remember it for decades to come. So thank you so much. I love you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Yuri and I'm an addict. Sadly, our time is up. If you have any questions that went unanswered, or if you feel the need to share, please introduce yourself to someone after the meeting and exchange phone numbers. We are all here to help. I don't know if we still have some convention-related announcements, Marta? Anyone? No? 1, 2, 3? That's it? No takers? I would like to close by having Franco from France read A Vision for You.
Hello, hi, I'm Patrick. I'm an addict. A vision for you. Our book, it's meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask Him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who's still sick. The answer will come if your own house is in order. But obviously, you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with Him is right, and great event will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God, and as you understand God, admit your fault to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as your truggled road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Thank you.